This episode is proudly supported by Westholme Australian Wagyu. Here's Stephen Sinclair from Jackson's on George.
In general, Westholme, I use several items on the menu from them. I always look to source products for their flavour. And with Westholme, I think they deliver that 100%. Australian Wagyu, in particular, Westholme is world class. Westholme is recognised for their quality all over the world. And then that's why, and when I tried it, and I absolutely love the flavour. This is, why I decided to put them on the menu.
Westholme believe that when nature leads, flavour follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
I just love talking to my customers every day and hearing their stories and even getting their feedback directly to me so that I can think, oh my God, thank you. We'll work on that.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Hospitality groups come in all shapes and sizes, and many are still family-run businesses. How do you maintain your identity and grow your brand out to add new venues and keep them as small local hubs of the community too? Giorgina Venzin is the owner of the Venzin Group. Giorgina, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm great. It's good to get you on the show. You're pretty busy with 6 venues up there in Queensland. How are things at the moment?
We're good. We're very lucky to be, as you said, family. So I have help, we've survived COVID, and now we can kind of survive if we keep pushing.
What's it like running a family business with multiple venues? When people think of groups, they think of not necessarily family run, but yours is a family run business. Does it have its challenges in that sense?
It does, and it's taken a kind of, many years. I've kind of, I started with my dad, and then I outgrew him and went and did my own things, and then my brothers come into businesses with dad. So in my journey, I've learned about boundaries. So we help each other out, but my businesses are my businesses, theirs are theirs. We're under the Venzin umbrella, but I think boundaries is very important.
It's been a tricky period of time. You mentioned COVID as well. What's the state of the industry? We've had some guests from Queensland, and they seem to think things are quite vibrant up there at the moment. Yeah,
I feel like, even just the Brisbane Lions winning on the weekend is just the vibe is happening here at the moment. I think pre-COVID, everyone kind of snubbed their nose at Brisbane or Queensland. And during COVID, a lot of, because of the borders, a lot of people moved here. So we had a lot of talent, a lot of experienced operators moving up, a lot of money being invested. And I just feel there's been a lot of growth. We're at this funny point now where there's potentially probably too much growth for how many people we have, but it's a good time to be here and a good time to get stuck into something and have the opportunities, I feel. And of course, our weather's amazing. We've got the Gold Coast, we've got Noosa, Sunshine Coast. So lifestyle and dining out, I really feel like it is the place to be, and I'm very proud to be living up here and established.
Your venues are real hubs of the community. Tell us a bit about the different venues that you have.
So all different venues. To give it briefly, my dad was an engineer based in Thailand. Gave that up at 50, started cooking at home, Thai cooking school, and opened up Thai restaurants. So we started there.
Wow.
So yeah, I know. That's a whole story on its own that we can go into. So we have, Thai restaurants, and then I kind of gone into the cafe space, and which I really enjoy for work-life balance, but has its own hurdles. But each of our businesses are kind of very different to kind of tailor to the area that they're in the community. And we loved doing different things just to be creative and express that rather than replicating the same model. So each of our venues now really are, molded around the community, what people like, and working with the area that we're located.
It's an interesting thing that you made about your dad. Take us back to that period of time and what it was like for you when he made that career shift. What sort of impact did that have on you?
Well, it meant we were suddenly eating a lot of curry. And when you're, 8 to 10 years old, that's not what you want to be eating. Um, so it was good though, because he was home a lot more. He used to travel. He was the corporate guy traveling. He was overseas. He wasn't around. Gave that up, came back, was obsessed with Thai ingredients, cooking curry paste. The house smelled like curry. It was a lot of fun. Before he had the restaurant, he had a Thai cooking school where he would go to people's houses and teach them Thai food. And my dad is from Switzerland as well, so he's very charismatic and charming, and he's the host and very entertaining. And then he started selling curry paste at the local markets down in Cleveland and also New Farm markets. So I used to go do that with him on a Saturday morning. We'd wake up at, I would think, probably 4 a.m., pack up the car, set up the stall and sell curry paste. Yeah, so it was a good thing to be doing young, and I guess got me involved in the food scene pretty young and quickly. And then he opened up Mon's Thai when I was about 13. So I'm 34 now. So we've had that in the family, over 20 years. And then I had the journey from working as a dishie to out of front, and then, how us young hospo kids grow through all the sections.
Do you have any stories of what it was like for you in that restaurant?
Oh my God, so many stories. I remember one. So my parents were separated. I still lived probably half an hour, 45-minute train ride. And year 12, I kind of was out in the front side and I was now managing. And he was at home, so he lived down the road 10 minutes. I walked home from school, got changed, got the train all the way up to Camp Hill. And then I wore my little Thai dress because, everyone was wearing Thai dresses in Thai restaurants at those times. And I just remember one night a customer was not happy with his prawns and he was yelling at me and I just started crying and I called Dad. I'm like, Dad, come down and help me. And he drove down and made it all better with the customer. So it was just many years of learning along the way, but which obviously you learn so much from being in those situations.
Sometimes growing up in a hospitality family and environment like that, people steer away from it. Were you ever sort of planning to steer away from hospitality, or do you think you were destined for it?
Oh, I always knew I wanted to work with people. I'm definitely a front of house. I'm much better being on the floor than in the kitchen. I'm a people person, and so was my dad. I finished school. I did a degree in event management and tourism, and I wanted to go to New York and live that event management dream. And when I got back, my dad said, come work in the business with me. You're going to be on this huge salary and, we'll take over the world. And I didn't end up getting that salary for at least another 10 years later. And I think when I went out on my own without him, but that's what I had planned for myself.
What was it like when you came back and worked with him? What was some of the sort of things that you took from your time with him?
Me and him, we get along like two peas in a pod. My mum will hate listening to that because she always gets upset that me and Dad get along so well. He was really good that he kind of just let me do it. I always had a million ideas of things, we should do and try and change. And he always gave me the flexibility to take those risks and learn from those lessons. He was really supportive. So I was very fortunate to have him, and we had a very good dynamic to try new things. He had a restaurant next door to Mon's Thai, which was an Italian restaurant. I'd had Paw by this time, but he had this Italian restaurant and he brought over a chef from Italy, and there was no pizza in the restaurant, which now works. But back then people did not respond well to that. So that restaurant was failing. And I said to Dad, hey, it's not working. Let's turn it into a cafe. And so he had enough and he goes, yep. And we closed that business. We went in and flipped it in 2 weeks, hired a new team, DIY renovation, and we opened up as Picnic Cafe and doubled the revenue he was doing as at a restaurant from day dot. So then we just went on a roll for a couple of years after that.
So tell us about, you mentioned that you had Paw by then. Tell us about your first venue, what it was like, how did you find the location, and what was it like creating your own very sort of personal venue?
So Pawpaw back then is half the size of what Pawpaw is now. Yet again, Dad had Greener Pie restaurant, which was a very famous restaurant before his time with Leanne was a Vietnamese restaurant. Her name was Leanne and her son was in the band Regurgitator. She sold it. Yeah, so it was busy, amazing. She sold it to our now landlord and he didn't run it amazingly. And then we bought it off him. Dad did. When he found like people would cancel their bookings, like people would group for make a group booking for 10 to 12 and then they'd end up cancelling. And then we kind of realised it was because they had heard of the changeover. They thought it was the old restaurant and blah, blah, blah. So we were struggling then. Like Pawpaw is 210 square metres. It's quite big. It's a front restaurant and the function room in the back. And Jerry owned Foxy Bee in the cafe next door and he said, guys, put a cafe in the back. So that was my opportunity to have my first baby business. And then I opened Pawpaw in the back room of Green Papaya. We had a separate team come in during the day and we used the same cool room and kitchen and they would leave. And then Green Papaya, which Dad was running, would open at nighttime through the front door and then the separate team came in. So that's how that started 14 years ago.
Looking back at yourself then 14 years ago running that business, how different do you look at your businesses now to back then when you first started Pawpaw?
I mean, I was a rookie just running, figuring it all out. How old was I? 21, 22, partying with the staff, not knowing the lines to, all that kind of stuff. And I found it really difficult as we grew being the boss so young when, my head chefs were older than me. So having that kind of respect was really, really hard. So it was a difficult time. So it was great when I got older and even now I realize I'm older than everyone. It's so much easier. But I guess getting that respect from this young kid, it was hard. But we also worked really, really hard. Amy opened up. She's my barista. She's been with me since day one and she's now still works for me. And we would just work 7 days a week, open to a close, just working hard, which is what you need to do in hospitality to kind of get it to tick over to the next level.
What did you do and how did you approach that when the sort of kitchen team were older than you? You were young. How did you sort of get them on side and get the business sort of going the way you wanted it?
Oh, how do I answer that one? I think I learned, quickly, obviously, which is when you're that age, you want to be friends with everyone and not to be that friend line. So obviously being friends at work and getting along, but making sure I wasn't spending time outside of work with people. So that was very important to learn really, really quickly. And it made me quite... If you hear about masculine and feminine energy, it made me quite masculine as a young girl, quite young. I just had to be tough and had to have that backbone and the chef culture back then is a lot more rough, of conversations and everything. So you have to grow pretty thick skin pretty quickly and learn not to take things personally, which is a good thing now looking back, having that skill set.
It's amazing that you've got 6 venues now. Tell us about that trajectory that you went on. How did you grow to have multiple venues and manage it? Did it change the way you sort of look at things and run things?
Yeah, so obviously, when you have one venue, you get to be with your customers and build that rapport and you have that kind of joy that you get out of work, which is, I think, why everyone does what they do. If you're a chef, you want to be in there cooking, and if you're a barista, you'll be making the coffee and a manager. So as soon as you grow and step out of that, your job completely changes to a leadership role and everything else that comes with running a business, marketing, admin, all those kind of things. So that's something that did change. But then obviously my leadership skills grew and they've really only gotten amazing now in the last after COVID, 10 years in when I got into my 30s and obviously I matured, I feel far more confident with all that than I did then. I really felt like I was winging it that whole way through for that kind of 10 years. Yeah.
Well, tell us about the venues and how you sort of acquired them and built them. Sort of 1 to 6 is a pretty big difference. How did you sort of add venues to the group?
So back then we were flipping. So we would find, like I explained, the Italian restaurant, we would find a business that maybe was, really run down, someone wanted to sell it, or it was a lease and already had the bones there of like all the plumbing and the electrical and maybe existing kitchen. So that's how we would find businesses to then go in and rejig and grow. And I would go spend 3 to 6 months in that venue before leaving it with a manager. So I would put in that time. We didn't do it too quickly. We did probably 1 a year when we were doing more often back then. But now, jump to the future, the last 4 that I've done in the last 4 years, which comes with more years of experiences. Back then we were flipping and doing everything on a budget. And then my last couple I've done with a proper designer, fit out team, all the fancy things, which is far more scary. But it just came with years of experience and learning how to manage your team, how to step away from the team, trust your managers, not micromanage. And it was just something that came with learning and growth.
You've got some very different venues, as we mentioned at the top of the show, whether it's Citron Bayside or the Patisserie Develop. How do you decide on, what's going to work in a location?
That is, I've got a lot of a gut feeling with things. With Darvella, the story with, Lindsay was the most amazing pastry chef I met in COVID. And she was helping at Paw doing a pop-up bakery, and we just had amazing work chemistry. And I said, let's open up a bakery. So then we went on the hunt for that. Where Darvella is in Bulimba, at the end of the street, we're next to Bellissimo Coffee, which has been there for years and a buzzing institution. The site next door was an old glass light factory that someone bought to kind of redevelop and turn it into a food hub. And it's at the end of the street where no one used to go. It used to be the other end of the street was where everyone was going. So we negotiated a pretty good lease. There wasn't any patisserie in the area. There was like a franchise one, and there is Flour and Chocolate over in Morningside, so nothing close enough. So it's guess we always kind of figure out like what's around there, is there a need for what we're wanting to put in there? What is the competition? What is the demographic like? And somewhat tailor our ideas to the area. Every time we've opened a venue, we've had to change it quite rapidly because you have your idea in mind and what you want to put out, but then people may not respond or be wanting what we're offering. So we've adapted every venue pretty quickly within the first 3 to 6 months to take what our vision is and then change it slightly to kind of accommodate the wants and needs of the area.
Yeah, amazing. There's a lot of people that put everything into their own venue and their own voice, and then, they get to a level where they have an opportunity to perhaps expand it and open another restaurant. What sort of advice would you give someone that might be in that situation that could start to build a group?
I would just make sure you have a really supportive team or someone involved with you, whether it be if you have a restaurant and you're going to open up another one, you have partnership with someone, which could be your head chef or manager, someone that is going to look after that first baby as you move to the next. Because you can't do it alone. It's so tough. You need to have people that you really, really trust and are going to support you because your restaurants or your cafes or your businesses are your babies at the end of the day. So you want to make sure they've got a very good babysitter.
With 6 venues, how do you spread your sort of time and put your energy into your staff and get the best out of them?
So I did a leadership course over COVID online when we thought we had no jobs anymore. really to learn about uplifting, your managers and your head chefs for them to uplift the team. So I felt previously like I had to be there all the time, really getting to know everyone. And now I just make sure I really, really support the leaders of the team and give them everything that they need and give them quality time with myself so that they can then do that with their team so that it trickles down. So I used to every day go to every store and be running around like a crazy chicken. And now I've learnt, I know, and it was tough. I was just, in the car half the time and then in and out so quick. I take out the head chefs and managers for one-on-one time, whether it be like a dinner or something like that, and they are now my family. We do team bonding activities, as often as we can. We have great just like WhatsApp chats for every store where we're just, cheering everyone on, and just really trying to be really positive and pushing the positive vibes as much as we can, and just keeping the good energy flowing from me to the managers to the team, and really being an open space. So I still on the weekends go to every store to make sure that I'm approachable for everyone, so everyone can always like talk to me, so that I'm not like this boss figure, if that makes sense. Yeah.
What sort of impact has this sort of newer approach had on not only the staff but the bottom line as well? Has it had an impact?
Yes, I just feel like the senior management team run the venues like it's their own, which is like what I want. And so then obviously they all just do their jobs better, and that just obviously the customers feel that, and then they want to come back. So even now on socials, only the last probably 6 months I've been really featuring, of every venue, like the head chef and the manager or the guys that work a lot are really the face of the team of each venue. So if you look at all the Instagrams of my venue, you'll see, I'm on my personal account a lot, but if you look at Davella, Citra and Monocle, you'll actually see the faces of the team, not me. So really just endorsing them and giving them the confidence. And a lot of my staff go on to open up their own venues one day, and I want to give them as much skill set to be able to do that. So if you can make them run it like their own, they're going to look after it, and, cutting wages, and then also cutting wages and costs when they can, and then also like upselling and doing everything that way as well.
You mentioned briefly a bit earlier about that there might be too many venues for the population sort of popping up now, sort of after COVID. Tell us a little bit about that and sort of the impact that it could have.
I just feel like, everyone wants to have a cafe or restaurant, or maybe everyone's moving here. And I think, look, there's definitely room in outer suburbs, but it's getting quite dense of things happening. So there's a new thing opening every week now. If you're looking at Urban List or the Weekend Edition, there's always something new opening. So of course everyone's going to go and try the new thing, and then it's not sustainable because obviously you're seeing restaurants closing down at the same time. So I just feel, if anyone was to come and open something here, I would say go into the suburbs where there's nothing around, and there's going to be you can have that pool of regulars that are so excited to have something, rather than driving to like kind of the dense city areas where everything is opening. Because when there's 10 coffee shops on a street and there's only so many people, that's not enough customers to make those businesses sustainable or profitable.
You've been a real part of the amazing sort of culinary rise of Brisbane and Queensland. Tell us a bit about what you love about the hospitality scene there.
I love the people. I love the talent that's coming. I love, like the food that these chefs are putting out, the fit outs that are happening here now. Like I'm still like just the baby kind of cafe girl. Like there's so many more amazing things, that I'm like, oh my God, I want to go there. I just feel like it's such a great place and so many talented people here now to surround yourself with. So like if anyone is wanting to do an apprenticeship or learn from, talented people, there's that opportunity here now. You don't have to move to Sydney or Melbourne to work in, the top restaurants. You can come do it here, and you can learn from some amazing, talented people. And that makes me excited for our industry and for future generations.
Well, you've got some of the best cafes up there in Brisbane. What's next? What's next for you? Do you have a plan for the next couple of years?
People have been asking me that, and I'm not sure. I'm like really enjoying working on the businesses that I have now and being, spending more time in every of my stores and really talking to my customers again and spending time with them, because when you're growing and so much, you really get pulled on the back end work side of things. And as I said, when you start and you love being a manager or a chef, I miss that. And I just love talking to my customers every day and hearing their stories and even getting their feedback directly to me, so that I can think, oh my God, thank you. We'll work on that. So I'm fortunate to be at a very nice spiritual place where I'm happy with what I have. And I just want to work the businesses and upskill my team. And, if I can have people work for me and grow and learn and be able to be either just be so happy working in the Venzin Group, it's the best place to work, or work for us and then get the skill set to open up their own venue, I'm happy.
Well, it's a good space to be in. It's been an absolute honour having you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear just a part of your story.
Thank you so much.
Please keep in touch and look forward to catching up again soon.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au.